Well, good afternoon. I'm still here in the Labyrinth where I recorded for Psalm 7. Felt like there's still a place to stay at least one more day. So we're in Psalm 8, and I have to tell you, uh, I wrestle with the interchange between this psalm and the poet. That's one of the beauties of art, is sometimes we have to listen to things that we may not totally agree with. We may not totally see as that which, or at least as we understand it. But it's important for us to hear the voices of others, even if we may not fully agree. And you may totally hear the same thing as the poet did, even though that may not be what my experience was. But here's Psalm 8, Divine Majesty and Human Dignity, as it's entitled by the translators. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens, and out of the mouths of babes and infants you have founded a bulwark because of your foes to silence the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals that you care for them. You have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You've put all things under their feet, all sheep and oxen, and the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. So as I shared, I don't know how I feel about the words of this poem by Marilyn Pagan Banks, but I'm grateful for her words because it pushed me. It pushed me to consider how I understand this psalm. And so here are her words in a poem entitled, What About the Children? Focusing on verse 2. God who knows all things, when did the bulwark become a weapon? Silencing the cries of the babes and infants clutched to the bosom of their parent, holding on to their sibling's neck as they all seek safety and refuge. Do you hear the choked cries of the children, kidnapped and terrorized, rounded up and locked away like animals? Do they still matter to you? How is it that the enemy's voice is heard above the wailing? The sound is disturbing. It is loud and ugly and mean. God, if you aren't going to do something, please remind us what we are made of and what we can do. Because what about the children? So the question in this psalm, and I think where Ms. Pagan Banks is coming from, is how do you understand those words in verse 2 about the glory above the heavens, and out of the mouths of babes and infants you founded a bulwark because of your foes to silence the enemy and the avenger. Another translation of this psalm puts it this way. Nursing infants gurgle choruses about you. Toddlers shout the songs. They drown out the enemy talk and silence atheist babble. So I wonder if what's being spoken of here is a statement that even out of the mouths of children, we can hear the voice of God. So we can hear the voice of the power of God and the love of God and the grace of God and the forgiveness of God and the hope of God. And so maybe where Miss Pagan Banks is coming from is are we hearing the voices of all of God's children or just some? Maybe what she's pushing at is how do we look and see how we are the people of God for all of God's children, not just by age, but all people across the world. As I've shared throughout this last couple of weeks, that this is a time that God is really working on me about this idea of not just how are we with one another, but how are we for one another. So I'm not sure. The interplay between this psalm and this poem to me is still kind of left open. I would love to hear about from you, like what do you hear both in the psalm as well as in these challenging words from Miss Pagan Banks. Sometimes these songs don't have an easy answer, and that's okay, because that's like our faith. That's even like this place where I am right now. That sometimes our faith and our lives are a twisting path. Sometimes we get to a place like where I am right now, here in the center, and sometimes we feel like we're still wandering. But we wander together with one another and with God. Grace and peace be with you.